Hold on, I'll tell you.
Hi, my name is Jason Hooper, and we're here with John Brisson from FixYourGut.com.
Hope you guys are doing well. Glad to be here.
It is cold here in Texas. John and I were just chatting about um, the inclement weather and the power outages and all this kind of stuff going on here in Texas. I got some power going here up in my office, and it's 39 degrees in here, so it's inside my office. It's freezing, um, but glad to have some kind of power, and hopefully we'll have clean water soon. One of the things that happened was when all the power shut down, the water treatment facilities stopped treating the water. Go figure. And
Yeah.
so now we're just drinking dirty water, um, or boiling it and stuff. But anyway,
Are people boiling it
haven't.
on like charcoal stoves and stuff like that and everything? Like charcoal grills, boiling the water that way? And
Yeah, I got a propane grill outside. I also have a power generator, so I had access to that kind of stuff. Just like a gasoline powered 2400 watt. So, yeah, it's kind of crazy. You know, I'm gonna avoid. I haven't bathed in a while. I don't know if you could smell that over
maybe
the
maybe we should spray some Mother Dirt
internet.
on you, huh? Must some Mother Dirt on
Yeah.
you.
Oh yeah, Mother Dirt. I did that protocol for 30
You did.
days. I went on that, and actually worked pretty well. It's pricey though. I think I actually did it for 90 days, not just 30 days. This was a while back, but yeah, it worked pretty well. Did a podcast with Dr. Weiss, and it was one of the first podcasts on our channel, I
Yeah,
think.
it was. Yeah, and you discussed, the theory behind the Mother Dirt products, which I think they're still in business. I'm looking them up right now. I think they are.
Oh yeah, they're
Um,
definitely still in business. Yeah.
and using their AO Plus mist that had what bacteria that they were using to they were
Oh
using
wow,
ammonia
it's been a while.
oxidizing bacteria, but what bacteria
Yeah.
was it? Let me see.
I forget. I can't remember it. It's been so long ago.
Nitrosomus eutropha.
Okay, I'll take your word on that.
I just looked it up to see
Yeah,
what it
when I
said.
was studying it a while back, so I think I'm peeking out with my audio. Let me lower this. Is that better?
Yes.
Um, when I was studying it, it's well studied in agriculture. Like they've studied a lot in soil and that kind of stuff. But it's been a while since I've done any research on it. It's definitely interesting. You just have to say, guess, if is the price worth, I guess, not bathing. Like I enjoy taking a shower, nice hot shower after a workout or something. To me, feels pretty good. It relaxes my muscles. I like magnesium salt baths too.
Hmm.
Just loading up the tub with Epsom salt, and I would use magnesium chloride if I could afford it, but the sulfate stuff is a whole lot cheaper. You can get those 8 pound bags at Walmart for $5.
Which is good for you. And there's studies to show that soaking in a bath actually breaks those epithelial cell bonds in the skin. The single epithelial column cells that make up our skin, very similar to the column or epithelial cells that make up our gut lining. And it allows the magnesium to actually go into your bloodstream more than just spraying topical magnesium on your skin. And the reason why topical magnesium on your skin itches so much is because the magnesium kind of dries out the skin and ends up irritating the skin. You don't really absorb as much as you do if you sit in a bath, and that's why you get soggy, because those skin junctions open up. You technically give yourself leaky skin, and that magnesium is
Mm.
able to get into the bloodstream by doing so.
Yeah, I was doing that. I demoed a product. Actually, kind of reminded me of the AO Plus or whatever, with a magnesium chloride spray, and gosh, that just burned. Especially in certain places. Like my torso and
Yeah.
under my arms or whatever. They directed me to spray it, and it's like, wow, this is harsh. I didn't enjoy it. So I tried diluting it, and that helped a little bit. But then, of course, you're not getting as much magnesium. But yeah, oral route is a lot less painful unless you take too much, and then could be painful. Um, but yeah, the magnesium salt baths they're really good for skin absorption.
A- AO,
Get the water nice and hot too.
AO Biome was supposedly doing different studies on how to apply the nitrosomus to other parts of the body. So they made it to a
Mm,
stage 2 clinical trial of using it intranasally to help with migraines,
interesting. That's
and
kind of
phase
cool.
3 to help with acne, which I assume it
Okay.
probably would compete against Propionibacteria acnes, which is one of the main causes of
Mm,
acne, as far from a bacterial standpoint. And so,
staph strep.
yep.
You know.
So it'd be interesting to see if anything came from, even though it's them doing it, you'd always like your studies to be replicated by someone who does not have an interest in the study, obviously,
Yeah,
financial interest.
that's
But
always nice.
it's still interesting, though. It'd be interesting to see if I also wonder about taking it orally if it's naturally found in the digestive tract, if it would help degrade ammonia that some people have issues with from H. pylori cleaving urea into urease in the stomach and producing ammonia. I wonder if it would maybe help with lowering people's ammonia loads who have H. pylori dysbiosis, who have a failing liver. I wonder if it would help.
Mm. Yeah, I don't know. It's from what I remember from the research that I did years back. It's not especially hardy. Um, like the chlorine in the tap water can kill it supposedly,
Yes.
but then other studies said that it could live in the tap water. So, like if the chlorine in the tap water is killing it, take it, if you go swimming in a pool or something, then what keeps it in the tap water when they use chlorine or chloramine? Maybe it's the concentration. I don't know,
And
but
it's also proteobacteria as well, so we'd have to test the reactivity of the endotoxins with the human immune system, because most of your
yeah,
proteobacteria endotoxins are very reactive to the human body, like E. coli or Klebsiella or H. pylori or Yersinia pestis, Legionella. So yeah, you'd have to test to see how reactive it would be to one's immune system to ingest
yeah,
safely the nitrosomus
yeah.
urinotropium.
Shingella too. Yeah,
Yeah, so you got to be careful because
yeah,
you've done a lot of research on endotoxins for Fix Your Gut, and I have as
yeah,
well. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and endotoxins are still something they're extremely concerning for me. It's just like as soon as I started learning about the different endotoxins that exist in the cell membranes of bacteria and how they're released and stuff, it's like, oh my gosh, like it's just opened up a whole new world of pathology to me that I just didn't really understand beforehand. But yeah, that, in any case, yeah, it'd be interesting to reach out to Dr. Weiss again and see
yeah,
what he's up to.
so an endotoxin, simply put, Jason, because you're better with your biochemistry than I am, and I'm a little bit better as far as biology is concerned, but there's a difference, in my opinion. Um, oh, a The endotoxin itself is a lipopolysaccharide, so it's kind of like a fat and sugar molecule together, right? Or am I getting
That's
this
right.
wrong?
Yeah. It's basically a polyol, like the O and FODMAP
Mm-hmm.
and a fat. Okay. And that's how it exists in the cell membrane, because the cell membranes are um, they're amphiphils too, which means that they have a fat section of it, and then they have a hydrophilic section, like usually phosphorus, phospholipids. And so that's how they kind of get into the cell membrane, is because the polyol acts as the hydrophilic component instead of phosphorus, and then the lipid component, acts as a fat barrier to keep water in and out. So they just make those endotoxins, they put them in their cell walls, and then when they die, they can release those, or some, actually, a lot of times they can release them even if they don't die. Some bacteria will just shed their cell walls and live in the biofilms with their nucleic material. For prokaryotes, that's pretty common. H. pylori being one of them that can do that pretty well. So yeah, it's yeah, that's basically what an endotoxin is, biochemically speaking, and it's not very good when it gets into our bodies because it does a lot of damage. They're very, very hard to remove from the bodies, from our bodies, and they get into places where we don't want them, like the heart,
Hmm.
the pancreas, basically the organs, because that's where the blood's flowing to.
Anywhere the
So it gets into
circulatory
there.
system's pushing blood through, right? And it's
Mm,
a little bit
yeah.
different when it's in the confines of our digestive system because we have many, billions upon billions trillions of gram-negative bacteria that live in our digestive tract, and they do shed the endotoxins when they die off. They do spill endotoxins outside of their cell wall, and a lot of that's just neutralized by our immune system or neutralized by other bacteria that live in our gut, or we just pass it out through feces through normal digestion. However, if you have leaky gut, if you have increasing gut permeability and those gut junctions are open up, those lipid polysaccharides can enter into the bloodstream. And once they do, they take a grand tour around your body and start causing inflammation and immune reactions because the body's like, hey, wait a minute, this isn't supposed to be here. So it starts treating it as a foreign agent or a foreign uh, body, and it starts upregulating inflammatory cytokine production. And it can cause, and it's, if the quantifications are high enough, it can cause endotoxemia, septicemia, and it can damage major organs. And if it's able to cross the blood-brain barrier, let's say someone's blood-brain barrier is leaky too, it's porous as well, it's able to get into the brain. Um, so and also not all endotoxins are the same too. I mentioned proteobacteria endotoxins tend to be some of the most potent that our immune system reacts to, but bacteroids, which is another gram-negative bacteria, which also has its own endotoxins, they're not as potent. The body doesn't react to them as strongly, and they make up a good amount, about 20 to 30% of a person's healthy microbiome. You got inoculated from them from birth. Shortly after you pass through, hopefully, if you were born vaginally, through your mother's vaginal birth canal, and so they kind of help prime the immune system in infancy, by training the gut-associated lymphatic tissue and the immune cells in your digestive system and the other microbes in your digestive system. So it is what we call a opportunistic, which can be probiotic or pathogenic depending on the circumstance, bacteria, where more of your hemolytic E. coli seems to be primarily pathogenic in its presentation to the human immune system. So
Yeah. And it has to be able to, usually the endotoxins just kind of pass through the system and it's not a huge deal. But like you said, if there's any sort of leaky gut, or if it's finding a way into the body through another means, like certain bacteria also, like Shigella, for instance, can ulcerate the colon, and then and then it just has direct access to your bloodstream to send endotoxins through. Uh, some The issue with the endotoxin for the body is the body doesn't have a really good mechanism for metabolizing it. Usually what happens is, well, a lot of times what happens is that the lipid part of it gets, like, it's the enzymes in our bodies try to start working on the lipid part of it, and it kind of gets stuck because it's got that oligosaccharide on the other side, and body's not used to having that. So you get your LPL, your low density lipids, which are these proteins that your liver makes to transport back to the liver to fill back up with triglycerides so you can send fat and energy to the tissues. And so LPS, which is a common endotoxin, will just kind of get stuck in that LDL, and then we end up having like what's called VLDL, very low density, and those just kind of like, your body, like, what do we do with this? We can't put more in because it's stuck, and so it just ends up depositing somewhere and calcifying, and then you get arterial calcification in the
yeah,
heart. That's really bad. Sometimes it presents as pancreatitis. Sometimes there's a lot of metabolic disorders that can arise from it. It can get caught in your blood-brain barrier. Whether or not it can pass through your blood-brain barrier, you'd have to have a really leaky uh, triple B. But it, even if you have an intact blood-brain barrier, what can happen is it sort of deposits there and it starts creating reactive oxygenated species that has an inflammatory cascade in the brain. So you don't want
Yes.
that either, whether or not you have issues with your blood-brain barrier or not. But yeah, LPS is a bad deal. You don't want that in your body. Um, you got to start fortifying your mucosal membranes if that's an issue, to make sure they're not crossing in. And if you've got a bacterial agent that is pathogenic, an invasive bacteria, Salmonella, Klebsiella, Clostridium difficile,
Which
C.
Clostridium
diff
is
for
gram
short.
positive for MIC-T. It's a little different in the toxins that they produce, but they still produce bacterial toxins nonetheless, though pyrotoxins and enterotoxins.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
Specific C. diff
Um,
toxins, by the way, which is its own specific to C. diff itself, A and B. So
yeah. With C. diff, you get the ulceration, and that it's just a straight path to the bloodstream. You don't have to, it doesn't care if you have leaky gut or not. Um, but in any case, yeah, you just need to kill those off immediately, if that's what you have in your colon.
So there's some bacteria, Jason, that are probiotic. We would consider probiotic where it's least likely that they're going to cause infections within the human body, like Bifidobacterium bifidum, for
Mhm.
example. Okay, they can cause dysbiosis or be a part of dysbiosis, but it's rarer. And then you have bacteria that we consider to be opportunistic, where they could either be helpful in the right concentrations of your digestive system, or they could be harmful. Bacteria, for example, once it reaches around 40%, the body starts reacting to the endotoxins that they produce, and they actually start breaking down and eating your mucosal barrier as well, in your intestinal tract, which could be a major problem. So they could be good or bad depending on the concentrations and the other microbes that make up the diversity of your gut microbiome. And then you have bacteria that seem to be primarily pathogenic, like hemolytic E. coli, Klebsiella pneumoniae, um, um, Shigella, Salmonella, bacteria that may be found in very small concentrations in your gut or other parts of your microbiome, but they tend to cause a disease quite frequently. No one should go around and high five themselves for having a high level of Klebsiella in their gut. It's just not a good thing. Is that how you see it, or am I incorrect in the way I break it
Yeah,
down?
100%. Yeah, I mean, I would prefer to have no Klebsiella, um, in any part of my GI or body for that matter. It's not good to have, like, very inflammatory. A lot of people with joint pain.
Rheumatoid
Uh,
arthritis
ha-
or alkalizing
yeah.
spondylitis, AS.
Well, and then another thing is, like, a lot of people who have these quote unquote autoimmune disorders, um, actually have Klebsiella overgrowth.
Yeah, for RA and
Um,
for AS. Yes, and they also have genes too as well, which from a genetic epigenetic level, like HLA, um,
yeah,
B27, that's specific to AS, and that might be NRA too, and that might be because if a person has polymorphisms in those genes, it makes their
yeah,
body react to the endotoxins of Klebsiella in a more severe fashion that we haven't complete understood yet.
yeah. I agree with that 100%. But the solution is still the same.
Yes.
Like, you're still going to need to kill off the Klebsiella, whether or not you have those genetic variants or not. And so, yeah, like, I think sometimes we tend to focus a little bit on the nuance, like, oh, well, I've got, like, you're talking to a client and they're like, oh, well, I've got this deal, I've got that deal. It's like, well, it doesn't matter. Like, the answer's still the same. Like, you got to get got to get rid of it now. Um,
Right about that, because
now,
it's a problem.
wasn't am I wasn't I thinking that some of the Klebsiella overgrowth has also been linked to thyroid disorder as well?
Yes, it has been a cofactor in Hashimoto's thyroiditis, even though it's my belief that Mycobacterium avium paratuberculosis is the main agent. I believe there's a condition called true Hashimoto's, which is caused by MAP, and there's a condition what I call false Hashimoto's, which is caused by gram-negative proteobacteria like Klebsiella or H. pylori, where the body starts reacting to the endotoxins when it enters the circulatory system and mistaking the thyroid hormones for endotoxins, and starts reacting to the thyroid hormones that the body produces, which is pretty much what Hashimoto's thyroiditis is. So, it's my belief that once you, in most cases, rectify the overgrowth, whether it's MAP, which is true Hashimoto's, or Klebsiella, which is false Hashimoto's, generally the disease goes into remission once you work on fixing the leaky gut and you restore any iodine deficiency or selenium deficiency or magnesium deficiency that a person has. Or in some cases, since insulin production does boost the amount of thyroid hormones that are produced by the human body, some people who have done long-term ketosis or long-term fasting can actually develop thyroid disorders too as well from a lack of insulin production. So.
Yeah. And the production of the different thyroid hormones is definitely been linked to your basal metabolic rate as well. So if you live if you're sedentary, you're sitting around, you're not exercising, that could also lower thyroid hormone as well, because your body doesn't really need thyroid if you're not going to be active and get up and run around and do stuff. So with the combination of having bacterial overgrowth or opportunistic dysbiosis, and a poor lifestyle, which is probably how you got it in the first place, can lead to some major weight gain. And you think about sort of thermodynamics and how it works with, like, okay, how is it that somebody could gain that much weight that fast?
Yeah.
When somebody puts on weight, they have some health issue, and they put on a ton of weight. And you start doing the math, and it's like, all right, a pound of fat has 3,500 calories in it, and matter can't be created or destroyed, so it had to come from some place, right? So how in the heck did it get there? How is this person putting on all this weight? A lot of it's water weight because of hormone changes. A lot of it's not fat, actually. So some of it's just bloating. And
some of it's gas
from
microbes that produce too as well, which would add weight too, especially if someone's dealing with SIBO.
Yeah.
You see bellies that are out to here and they're bloated because of gas production. That's going to add some weight.
Yeah, for sure. And just the quick absorption of triglycerides is a huge factor when the AMPK is downregulated all the time, because your pancreas is always trying to keep up with your blood sugar levels. And so,
hey, you can take metformin to increase that APMK.
Yeah, I watched your metformin video. I was hoping to maybe talk to you a little bit about that, if you're down for that.
Yeah, we can go ahead and discuss it. I know your trials and tribulations with metformin.
Yeah, so I think it was like Dr. Peter Attia, I think, that introduced me to this metformin protocol, and he's one of these like longevity doctors or whatever, and saying like, you take this. There's a lot of these longevity doctors out there. I just heard one on the Tim Ferriss podcast. I forget how long ago it was, but somebody else had kind of a Australian, New Zealand type accent. I can't distinguish the difference. Sorry to our friends down under, but your dialects are hard to differentiate for me. But in any case, he was saying the same thing. Like he takes metformin every single day, and in Peter Attia's, like, one of his last articles, he wrote like, you're supposed to ramp it up to the point of bowel tolerance, like keep incrementally taking more and more and more until it gives you diarrhea, and then back off, and that's your dose that he recommends, which is crazy amounts of metformin. And you kind of focused on how it affects the gut. but for me, how it affected my energy, my recovery. I'm a fairly active
Yeah.
person, and I felt like garbage. Even after just a couple of weeks, I felt like I had no energy. I don't know if it was sapping my B12 levels or what, but it was definitely affecting my recoveries after
Well, it does
workouts.
harm something I talked about in my book, Coming Out Fix Your Mitochondria, that I didn't put in that blog article. It does reduce complex one of the electron transport chain's efficiency.
Mm.
And in doing so,
Yeah,
that
it's
could reduce energy. Now, the body, they claim for longevity, well, the body overcomes that. It upregulates the electron transport chain and it becomes more efficient over time. And I'm like, well, yeah, okay, sure, that happens. Usually when parts of the electron transport chain are compromised, the different complexes that you have within the electron transport chain, the body eventually tries to overcome it by upregulate, production of CoQ10 or upregulate the Krebs cycle in an attempt to kind of override that, right? But in this case, with metformin, that's not always what happens, So it does kind of reduce mitochondrial output and function. For some people, it's just not good for them, So that might have been what will happen to you is your mitochondria just producing less energy because complex one was hindered with the electron
yeah,
transport
it
chain.
could be. The other thing that I've always had issues with, whenever I have a loose stool, I always feel like I have less energy.
Me too.
You know, I don't know if it's because like my all the smooth muscle tissue and the intestines are just having to work, and it's just burning up energy that I could be using for deadlifts or something in the gym. But I just always feel just drained, after having loose stool. And with my gut, I tend to lean towards that area. I've only been constipated a couple of times in my whole life. One was after a major surgery. Um, but in any case, yeah, it wasn't for me. I didn't enjoy it. So I was thinking about also you're talking about it's strange too because the mechanism of action isn't clearly 100% defined
No, it's not.
on glucophage.
Some people say it's because the microbiome changes and differences might be the reason why it's effective. Some people say because it modifies APMK production, upregulates
Yeah,
it. There's many different theories of why it may work for type 2 diabetes and improve insulin sensitivity.
yeah. So that's exactly what I was thinking about, and I was thinking about like, well, what else upregulates AMPK? Um, and what else was it? The PBP beta one
Mm-hmm.
um, cascade and the mammalian target rapamycin, and it's like, well, there's better supplements out there that I think probably would do the same
But
thing,
wouldn't chronic
maybe without
exercise
the
do it
side
too,
effects.
though? Like if you just exercise and ate, like I mean, that was my recommendation. You have type 2 diabetes is just
Yeah, well, of
exercise
course.
properly. Get proper sunlight exposure. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, getting exercise is definitely gonna be pretty effective. But I was just thinking about like, for instance, just ginseng. Like the Korean ginseng has a huge impact on AMPK.
What about magnesium? I thought magnesium does too as well, and also helps with
Yeah,
blood glucose regulation.
yeah,
Magnesium promotes mitochondrial biogenesis by upregulating AMPK, if I remember correctly.
yeah.
So,
You're right. Yeah, it can. But yeah, if you have a magnesium deficiency, that could definitely be the case. And if you got poor digestion, might not be absorbing all that magnesium in the first
well,
place
yeah,
from
that's
your
why
food.
you want to use magnesium glycinate, which is the most absorbable form, or one of the most absorbable forms. And you want to take it, divided doses, so it doesn't give you diarrhea. Because if it gives you diarrhea, you got leaky gut. It's increased the
Yeah.
osmolarity of the intestinal tract. What about PQQ? PQQ through mitochondrial biogenesis would upregulate AMPK, wouldn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Well, you start looking at the NAD to NAD plus conversion ratios, and anything that's going to do that is going to upregulate AMPK. Um, and also, an interesting side effect. Okay, so yeah, it's strange the way this works because this same genetic pathway is related to autophagy, which is
Mm-hmm.
where the body destroys its own cells and uses them for energy, which could be good for weight loss. And if you need to catalyze some tissue, it's not it doesn't go after the prime, tissues. It goes after the damaged junk. And I think that's why like they recommend that as a anti-cancer drug, is because
Metformin, yeah.
it's going to cannibalize those. Yeah, it's going to cannibalize those cancer cells. And if I had cancer, I would consider going back on metformin again, just for that benefit. But again, I'm still thinking about other things that do the same thing. What is that flavonoid that's in orange peel?
D-limonene.
Uh, no, that's a terpene. The flavonoid, the
Quercetin.
bioflavonoid. Yes, horses. Yeah. Um, it also has an impact, and you can make a tea out of it. If you just take orange peels and make a tea, I think it tastes pretty good. Um, and
You'll get a good
actually, I've
dose of
been
you'll get a good dose of D-limonene, and which is anti-cancer, by the way. But you're right, it is a terpene. I can't believe I got them confused. And quercetin. However, people with oxalate issues, the peel of the orange is pretty high in oxalates. So
how is it really?
making a tea may cause issues in people with oxalates. Um,
Hmm.
but yes, it would work. I mean, you have a good dose of quercetin, you have a good dose of D-limonene. Both are anti-cancer agents, supposedly, per studies. So yeah, that would be a good idea.
Is that why? Is that why orange peels are so bitter? Is that because of the oxalic
Some
acid?
of it's because of the oxalic acid, yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Some of it's because of the other terpenes that have a more bitter taste to them. But yeah,
There's another herb from, I think it's from India. It's like a vine. I can't remember the name of it. But it's often called like the cheap ginseng, even though it's not ginseng. It's one of the newer herbs that's hit in the Western market. It's been used in India for a long time.
I have no idea what you're talking about offhands on that. I mean, if we're talking about like herbs, like you talk about like ashwagandha.
No, it is used as an adaptogen though, but there aren't a whole lot of studies on it. Um, I don't know. I'll do a post on it one time,
Okay.
and see, just to clue people in. But I think like a lot of these things have similar mechanisms of action as glucophage or metformin, without like or what I've experienced was pretty debilitating side effects.
I mean, technically, you could
Um,
probably take PQQ and ubiquinol to negate some of those mitochondrial issues associated with metformin.
I tried. Yeah, I tried doing that, for sure, and I still felt horrible.
Because supposedly, with
Um,
metformin, it's the beginning that it harms the mitochondria and hinders them, and it kind of works as a hormetic effect. That later you get
hmm,
benefits down the line. But maybe there's some genetic, maybe you
I've
have some,
heard that.
maybe you have some genetic polymorphisms that kept you from being able to achieve those
I don't
hormetic
know.
effects. I'm just theorizing here. I have no idea without doing the
I can't.
research. But
I can't think of too many. I mean, a lot of that mammalian target of rapamycin cascade is really tightly regulated,
yeah,
and it's been used in, you know,
is it possible that metformin wrecked your microbiome, and in doing so, since you had more endotoxin production, which I mentioned in the blog, that could have
could be, yeah.
led to energy reduction and increased mitochondrial oxidative stress if it leaked out of your gut?
Yeah, for sure. That could definitely be a possibility. But yeah, I mean, basically, that's what the advice I was given was, yeah, just ride it out. You're going to feel like crap for a couple weeks, and then you'll start feeling better. And I never felt better, so I just discontinued. It was awful, and I was like, well, so I didn't think of it again until you did that live stream, um, the other day, and I was thinking, hey, there's probably better alternatives that work on the same pathways that don't have the same side effects, because ginseng's not that hard on the gut.
No, it's
Um,
actually good for the gut in a lot of cases.
yeah, orange peels great, great for the gut, unless like you said, oxalate issues, but that's
You
usually
got to be
more of
careful
the
with the supplement
kidneys.
quercetin, even though I do use it as a mast cell stabilizer and referral to coaching clients and everything. I did find out, I did not know this. And it does have a kind of the same hormetic effect that we mentioned earlier on metformin, though it's less significant. Did you know that quercetin is a weak to moderate proton pump inhibitor, Jason?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it does. It does reduce stomach acid. Yeah, I was aware of that,
Which proton pump
but
inhibitors do and reduce mitochondrial function, do they not? Because there's
yes.
various much of a similarity between
Well,
the proton pump and between the electron transport chain of the mitochondria.
yeah, it kind of depends on how it's acting on the proton pump. But yeah, you're right.
I
It
mean,
could potentially do that.
there's studies that it does, and also there's studies that proton pump inhibitors are antibacterial because it's that same mechanism between all three, right? So
Yeah,
it's interesting, you know. So if you're going to take quercetin, I recommend that you take it on an empty stomach away from food. If you can
yeah,
tolerate
for
it, it doesn't
sure.
cause gastritis because it is a weak to moderate proton pump inhibitor. I wish we knew the half life of how long it lasts. We know your standard proton pump inhibitor medications have a half life of about 24 hours, give or take, some longer than others. But I wonder what the half life for quercetin is as far as its proton pump inhibitor ability. Um,
I don't know off the top of my head. I think that the half life is actually pretty short from what I can remember, but
yeah.
I'll have to look it up. Um, like, well, it's so let's see. I'm just thinking of, I should just look it up, but I'm just thinking of like the biosynthetic cascade of how it relates to vitamin C, and vitamin C's half life is like 30 minutes or something, like it's really short. So
Wow, the
you'd have to see like,
half life of quercetin is a lot longer than we both thought it was. It's 11 to 28 hours in humans.
okay. And that's for the proton pump mechanism.
Not the plasma quercetin response levels.
Okay. So yeah, I would think that you'd have to look at that mechanism specifically. And then I would also have to say, like, for the effect that's going to have, you have to say, like, well, what kind of dose are we talking about here?
Yeah.
What's the therapeutic dose and how much effect does that have? And then to cause an activation of proton pumps, what does that dose have to get up to for that to start happening?
From the doses I've
And
seen in animal studies, they did them in dogs. It was kind of low.
okay.
Um, to have a mild effect, and that might be why quercetin is recommended in people with gastroesophageal reflux disease. You know,
Hmm.
where yes, proton pump inhibitors again, they do. Many people who have GERD do it does have a positive effect in their symptoms for a short period of time because it has an antimicrobial effect, so it reduces dysbiosis in the stomach. There's less gas produced. There's less reflux going on. But ultimately, as you and I both know, proton pump inhibitors, especially with mid to long term use, have numerous side effects associated with them, including worsening dysbiosis because the stomach acid serves as a purpose, the low pH of the stomach, to keep bacteria from being able to grow in there and replicate, and other organisms too. I've coached a few people with candida gastritis, specifically, Jason. It's rare, but it's in medical literature.
It is rare, but yeah, it can happen. And yeah, it's definitely not good.
And B12
But the
deficiency and
more
magnesium deficiencies from PPIs. I mean, how do you feel about PPIs? I know you're not a fan of them either. Um,
No, I think I actually I'm not just not a fan of them. I'm dead set against them.
yeah, yeah,
I think
me too.
that no one has any. Somebody asked me once. It's like, is there any reason why anybody should take a PPI? And I don't think so.
I don't think
I
so
think
either.
the answer to that is no. And
No.
I think that if you have a doctor that prescribes you a PPI, you need to find a new doctor. That's how bad I think. You
I mean,
know,
maybe if you had Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, and maybe instead of using a PPI, maybe you should use an H2 antagonist or use
yeah, for sure.
quercetin for a short period of time. Until you're
Well,
able to
well,
rectify getting
because
those tumors out of those non metastasized tumors out of your stomach. So
the problem is going to be the overgrowth that occurs in the process of raising that pH in the gut, which is going to be more comfortable for your, for the I guess the sensitivity, the area where those tumors are growing. But in the long term, like in the well, even in the like the midterm, it's going to do more harm than good. You're going to end up with more discomfort down the road than if you controlled the microbiome and, you know, just had to put up with that until you could get those tumors excised or whatever your treatment option is.
Because most people, they don't have too much stomach acid like you would have in someone with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, because the tumors are secreting too much gastrin, which is upregulates stomach acid production. Most cases, it's because they have bacteria in their stomach that generally don't live there, like H. pylori, that again, produce urease to convert urea into ammonia, so the pH of the stomach goes up. And that's why most people, when you give them things to decrease their stomach pH, like betaine HCl or apple cider vinegar or something to that effect, lemon juice, their reflux tend to gets better. Not always, but tends to get better.
Yeah, apple cider vinegar, by the way, is way overhyped, I think,
It
and
is.
lemon
It
juice
is.
too. Like
It is.
to have any sort of meaningful effect on gastric pH is negligible. So, I mean, if you enjoy drinking apple cider vinegar or lemon juice, great,
I mean,
go
some
ahead and
people
do
it
that.
does
But
have an effect. I slightly disagree with you on that, but to say that it's comparable to betaine HCl is laughable. I agree. Yes.
I mean, yeah,
Which is straight hydrochloric acid. So
yeah, neither one of them are very powerful acids.
no, not compared to betaine, hydrochloric
No,
hydrochloric acid.
yeah, which is that's why that's the primary pH regulator in gastric pH buffering. That's why there is a proton pump, is so that you can basically the proton reacts with the chlorine from sodium chloride, from salt, and turns it into hydrochloric acid. So again, if you're on a low salt diet, you're probably low in stomach acid
Yep.
too.
Yep.
And if you're not eating enough salt, well, then what are you eating? Probably eating less sugar.
Now, Jason,
Well,
were we told that salt's harmful now?
yeah. By who said that?
The American Heart Association.
Oh yeah, something about I don't know. I read an article or something from one of those government agencies that said something like the salt forms crystals in your blood, and then it like nicks your arteries as it's going through. And it's like
Is that person
the
high
most
when they wrote this
ridiculous.
article?
Yeah, it's like that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Um,
Do you know? Yeah, like it's like, do you know? Like,
the studies of blood pressure with salt intake? It's negligible. Like you have to take like 20 to 30 grams of salt for it to even have a major benefit for most people.
well, and so I did a video on this actually that I don't know, it hasn't been released for some reason, but
Okay.
on aldosterone and like how hormones have a much bigger impact on blood pressure than the minerals. The mineral glucocorticoids have a much greater impact because your body is built to handle the minerals that we intake. If you're taking too much salt, your
Yeah.
body's great at being able to get rid of salt. Um,
As long as your kidney
now,
function is normal, okay. Like if you're on dialysis, no. But that's the different situation. So
well, yeah. So these hormones are created in the adrenal glands, which are just above the kidneys.
mm-hmm.
So even if you had kidneys that weren't functioning, but your adrenal glands are functioning, well, then you're in good shape. But so then what about people that have adrenal overload? People that are in chronic stress. Is it a wonder why they have a pear-shaped body? They're retaining water around the midsection. So that kind of thing. But in any case, yeah. Yeah, salt is very necessary, and so is potassium. Like if you don't have potassium, you can't shed excess salt
well, all
because
the
the way it works.
electrolytes are important, right? And proper hydration. So we're talking about calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, sodium, and potassium.
Yeah, well, but just for staying alive, salt is is extremely important. Potassium is probably number one because it has the most regulatory action on plasma versus intracellular cytoplasm. And if your cells die, well, then I don't care how much magnesium or phosphorus or whatever, like you're dead.
Well, you
So
still need them all though for the heart to have electrical conductivity.
you do.
You need them all. So
I'm just saying that there's a hierarchy of
there's
need
a
for
hierarchy of
certain.
electrolytes.
Yes, absolutely. And potassium is king of all. And then comes sodium, and then probably magnesium or calcium, probably, and then magnesium, actually. But because of the calcium channels as well. But if you're calcium deficient, then you're just going to start having seizures. You know.
Yeah, you're right.
Um,
Remember, Brondo's a thirst mutilator. It's got electrolytes, Jason. So you remember Idiocracy,
yeah.
right? You remember what I got that from? I think.
Yeah, I remember that. I actually used to have a can here in my office of Brondo. It was like an energy. Somebody made like an energy drink
Yeah.
with, and I guess I bought the Brondo licensing, and I had a can, but I kept it for so long that it fermented and exploded. And one day I came in and there was like splatter all over that
Hey, at least your
white
thirst was
wall.
mutilated. So.
Well, yeah, maybe it watered some of my succulents back there that I keep in my office. Yeah. But yeah, I like those little succulent plants. Plants of indoor plants have been shown to increase your serotonin levels and also increase happiness, your total perception of
And
happiness.
improve air
So it's good to
quality.
have. Yeah. Well, I don't know how much these little guys are improving the air quality here, but they're fun to look at, and you don't have to water them very much. But that's why I got those lights hanging down too. Those are UV lights, so that when I'm out of the office, which is quite often, not in here a whole lot, they can, not, they can still have light for photosynthesis and not die.
Which is important. Hey, okay, so let's move on. Let's discuss one final topic, okay?
Okay.
Um, let's discuss someone who I do respect their body of work, but someone you do not respect their body of work, and that would be Jack
I know who this is
Cruz.
going to be.
Okay.
Yeah, I know you're going to say Jack Cruz.
So, and do I think Jack Cruz is right about everything? No, I don't. But I do think that his basic tenets are sound.
I agree with you. Okay, so a lot of these people that I disagree with, I agree with their conclusions. The way they get there are insane for a lot of people. And I guess maybe sort of the importance and weight on little nuances, which is kind of, I think, how they build their brand, is exceptionally exaggerated. And with the case of Jack Cruz, it's going to be EMF. So,
Yes, which someone asked for us to discuss this.
okay.
I want to discuss it real quick. We'll do a full show on it. All right, I'll come with my full,
Okay.
you know, points of topics of debate and information. But
Okay.
I myself think that non-native EMF, for health reasons, is an issue. Now, some people who have healthier mitochondrial function and have healthier mitochondria and healthier cells and have proper ratios of omega-3 fatty acids and minerals, nutrient ratios, okay, someone who's not nutrient deficient, they're able to handle their exposure to non-native EMF to some degree without it causing massive, damage to their cells or without it causing health issues for them. Okay, but there are some people who are sensitive to the effects of non-native EMF who may have poor mitochondrial function and poor cellular health. Now, I myself try to limit my exposure to non-native EMF. I do like the modern conveniences that we have in our modern world. I do have a cell phone, for example, but I do have a safe sleeve where I've checked the front of it using an EMF meter, and the thin piece of silver that there is able to block it so that when I shove my cell phone into my pocket, it's not irradiating in my testicles, as well as I also keep certain functions off my phone unless I need to use them, like Bluetooth or GPS, so the phone doesn't warm up. So if it's not the non-native EMF that's cooking my sperm, it's the heat of the phone that's cooking my sperm. It's one or the other, all right? So, I do my best to keep it there. So certain things that I do, I don't go, as far as some of the Cruisites do, okay, or the people that follow Jack Cruise's work religiously, okay. But I turn my Wi-Fi off at night. I don't let my kids use wireless controllers, for example. They have to use wired controllers. Like, I do my best to limit the amount of non-native EMF that is in my general vicinity the best that I can. I know that all my neighbors have routers going on. I know there's 2 or 3 cell phone towers a mile or two down from my house. I understand that's inescapable. But I choose to limit the amount that I'm exposed to because I do believe that it does affect a person's health to some degree. Okay, and everyone's different in the ways that it will affect their health and the severity they affect their health. Do you agree with anything that I said there, or is it just, because I'm not taking the full approach that 5G is going to destroy the world, right? Okay, I'm not taking that approach, all right? But I'm saying that there has to be some sort of cellular effect from this non-native EMF radiation because human beings were not exposed to it on a constant basis, before the past, I don't know, 70 years, 100 years, if we're talking about dirty electricity, 120 years. So, so am I wrong in just being cautious and not going completely overboard? Would you disagree with that? Where do we agree and where do we disagree if there is any agreement or disagreement?
So 5G, I just want to touch on 5G for a second. And I think that 5G is probably the something to be concerned about, actually.
The 5th generation of wireless technology.
Yeah, because of the frequency band being close to the visible light spectrum. So like EMF is, it includes a lot of different types of electromagnetic fields. The visible light spectrum is EMF. So if you've got lights on, you're being exposed to EMF. And actually, that has more of an impact on you than something that's further away from that spectrum that can be attenuated, that isn't attenuated, that just passes through solid objects. But
the sun
with the 5G spectrum,
the sun would be considered native EMF, where my light bulb's non-native EMF, technically, if you wanna go with that language. So, but go ahead.
Right.
You are right.
Okay. So whether you have artificially created EMF, and even if you build a Faraday cage, right, block all that stuff in your house, you still are going to say, well, you have electricity in your house. Mm-hmm. What do you think that is?
Yep.
Yep.
That's true.
You have other people living in your house. What do you think that is? Do you know that we put off a lot of EMF?
We do.
Your heart beats, you're putting off EMF. A lot of animals evolved to be able to communicate through electromagnetic fields, like fish. That's why a school of fish, they can change directions altogether.
But it is biological EMF, though. But I'm just putting it out there. Biological EMF.
It is. But then, we say, it's kind of like the same argument where you say like, oh, there's chemicals in your food. And then I say, well, when would there not be chemicals in your food?
True. But aren't some of those chemicals more harmful than others, though?
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing, is that, we have to be able to prove that something's going on. So getting into the 5G thing, and the reason why I think that 5G is potentially more damaging than the other fields, is I think that, number one, I think it might have an impact on certain infrared radar, or infrared, I guess it wouldn't be radar.
Weather radar. There's been multiple reports about it interfering with weather radar.
And that's a huge issue, because might not be able to detect a hurricane as fast. I don't know how, if they have a bunch of towers out in the Gulf of Mexico or whatever.
No, there's meteorologists that are concerned about that. They've written about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
The other thing is, as it gets closer to visible light, it's going to attenuate more. So it should have more of an impact. If it's going to have an impact on biology, it should have more of an impact than some of the other frequency bands that are not. But yeah, the rest of it, you just have to be able to demonstrate physically, I'm talking about in the field of physics, that having certain types of radio frequencies are going to have any influence on mitochondria
Well,
at
there are
all.
studies that increases calcium influx, which in doing so triggers increased oxidative stress and reactive oxygen species, reactive nitrogen species formation within the mitochondria. There's studies to prove that, both in vivo and in animals and in vivo humans too. So,
When they're the thing is when you're looking at the study, you have to have some kind, like you can have a study and you can see, okay, you run an experiment and it's like we did this and then this happened. Okay, then that's kind of like step one, right?
mm-hmm.
Step two is you kind of have to find a link in the chain of, why is this happening in the first place? Because a lot of times you'll see a result from an experiment that had really nothing to do with the experiment in the first place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this happens all the time in research where it's like, oh yeah, it's because we did this on accident or something, or there was some other thing, or it was a
You have to
temperature
be able to
change or whatever.
replicate it. You have to be able to replicate it within the boundaries set by the first study. Yes.
Well, even if you replicate it again and again, there are things called confounders, right?
Correct. Yes.
So there, and when new emerging studies are coming out, we don't know what all the confounders are until we discover them,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
So what's more likely is it that the EMF is affecting the mitochondria, or there's a confounder that we don't understand? Similar to the cell phone thing that you were talking about earlier, where it's like, well, is it lowering our sperm count because of the radio waves coming from the phone, or is it because of the temperature change? Because when they first started doing that, nobody's thought like, oh yeah, well the testicles hang below
They're
the
cooler. They're
abdomen for a
cooler.
reason.
They're
Yeah.
cooler. Yes. Yes.
So yeah, when we have a longer conversation about this, we can start getting into the physics of the electromagnetic band
Okay.
spectrums and bands, and kind of see with and I think before we start getting into biology, I think it's important that we understand the physics of how EMF works, whether and the potential that it has to affect matter. Um, and then once we kind of get a handle on that, then we can start considering biological impact. But I think that's also the biggest downfall of somebody like Jack Kruse, is that he has absolutely no basis in the realm of reality or physics. It's the stuff that he's talking about with he cites Einstein a lot for the Planck constant. Basically Einstein, before he published anything on relativity, he wrote papers about the Planck constant and basically how light can turn into electrons through attenuation. And you can cite, you can stand on the shoulders of the great minds like that, but you still have like no idea about what you're talking about when it comes to everything else, about the visible light spectrum and attenuation versus
So if
the radio wave spectrum.
so if 5G does affect, let's say, water,
Okay.
is a possibility that it would affect the functioning of the human body, even on the level, let's just say, our skin, if it attenuates the water that makes up our skin?
So is it, if it's being attenuated, then what's the chemical change in the water?
Um, my belief is breaking apart the bonds of
So
the H2.
you're hydrolyzing the water.
Yes.
Okay. So you're hydrolyzing the water. So now you have a free proton, or you have a free hydrogen,
Yes, a free hydrogen ion.
and
Yes.
then you have oxygen.
Hmm.
Okay. And then what?
So then it kind of just it breaks apart and it frees itself, and then from there you can end up having. Now this is what I've seen. I could be mistaken about this when we further do the research. It ends up creating from that free oxygen reactive oxygen species,
Well, reactive oxygen
because the
species,
oxygen
a
ends up
reactive oxygenase species.
oxygen ends up reacting with something else, since it is
Yeah.
unbonded from the hydrogen from the H2O bond, two hydrogen molecules bonded to an oxygen molecule, so it ends up interacting with depends on the person. Some people have more free iron, for example, than others, right? So the oxygen react with the iron. It happens within the mitochondria, increases mitochondrial stress. So it can happen, supposedly at exposure of the non-native EMF, which is the fifth generation, and in doing so, it will, cause kind of dehydration of the skin.
Well, we should probably wrap up because it's been a while. But there's oxygen that's going to be in our bodies. We need oxygen to live, and so having a
But it is usually tightly, regulated and controlled because
through through
it
respiration, yeah,
can
and also
react.
we also hydrolyze water as well.
We do our mitochondria.
Uh, yeah, and so that takes place all the time, and so like, well, how you have to figure out, well, how much of this is happening? If I put a glass of water by my Wi-Fi router, how much of it is evaporating because of
Yeah, but I guess we'll have to test with the 5G, and see, you know.
yeah.
I guess one last thing, one
Well,
very last thing we'll end. It'll be about an hour. Is what about the so Paul? So do you believe there's any truth to the photoelectric effect in human beings of gaining energy from sunlight exposure?
okay, yeah. I mean, so that's basically what I was talking about before with the Planck constant and Einstein. So yeah, I mean, obviously, like if sunlight hits your skin, it's gonna warm up your skin, right? Because the light energy transforms into heat energy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now is there electron transport that's going to happen on the skin as well? Of course, there's going to be. What's the biological impact of that? Well, probably pretty negligible. Okay, because we don't have chloroplasts. All right,
Correct.
we
We're
don't
not. We're not
have,
plants.
but there are microorganisms on the skin that react to it differently. That's how vitamin D is made, and that's how we absorb vitamin
Through
D.
cholesterol, that's on our skin. The microorganisms will react to the UV
Yeah,
light too as well, and may
yeah,
communicate with and some of that UV may penetrate the intestinal tract, or the microbes on the skin may communicate through the microbes to the gut through quantum sensing. We don't really know quite yet.
well, yeah,
So
and the caphsterol is very common in the fungi kingdom. So the mushrooms, sources of vitamin D, and
yes,
so like
well
all
D2.
the yeasts that are on our skin, no, D3, and all the yeasts on our skin is derived from is it's making that D3 as well, and then we sulfonate it and absorb it into the body. But yeah, I mean, um, like you were talking about in your glucophage video, um, about, do you want to live life or do you want to obsess about every little thing? And I think that the people that go too far into this are just, they are, I think they have an unhealthy fear of this stuff. And when we have the next discussion on it, we'll talk about, we'll try to project some biological influence, how much biological influence it has, and then try to go back and rationalize, okay, so what are we going to do about it? And how are we going to alter our lives as a result because of, whatever percentage that we, and we'll agree. We'll I won't set a percentage unless you agree to it. And then we'll just kind of rationalize it from there. Like, what steps should we take what if it's 90%? Well, that's pretty severe. We should probably shut down all EMF. What if it's, 1%? Then what do we do? So I think that's kind of the next step is to figure out, once we start defining the physics behind a possible attenuation and the probability of that occurring, then we have to figure out what we're going to do about it. Basically, what are we going to change?
In our
What
own personal
health decisions
lives.
are we going to make? Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like there's people that are just like, oh well, I'll never eat. I don't know, like I'll just never eat dairy because dairy's bad or whatever. And it's like, you're never going to ever eat dairy again. Um, you know, I,
Again, like I
I
have a cell
guess.
phone, but I just try
Right.
to do certain things to reduce the amount of non-native EMF that I'm
I
exposed to.
got you. We'll talk about that too. I just don't know that those things are actually doing
Well, we do know. Well,
anything.
we do know
Um,
that reducing GPS or Bluetooth on a phone reduces the specific absorption rate by doing those things. Like a phone does, there is a SAR reduction and having less. If anything, it just keeps me from using less battery, and my
yeah,
my
that's
phone
true.
is
And your
less
phone's
hot.
not going to get as hot. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's, I mean, those are good points. Those are good points. But I mean, look, I got Bluetooth head
I know you do. I don't.
earbuds
I
in
don't
right
use
now.
them.
And
I don't use them.
yeah, I think they're great. I love them. Active noise canceling. They don't sound as good as like my audiophile
Of
cans that I have
course.
over here.
Of course.
But hey, they're very convenient and they don't get in the way. When I'm podcasting or something, I have to worry about tripping over a cable or whatever. So it's like, yeah, again, it's the convenience factor versus that. What are the trade-offs? Um,
And how
and
sensitive
that's
you
what I
are,
hope to
and
discuss.
how sensitive you are to it, and everything. And some people are more sensitive
Yeah,
to others. So
well, and some people are hypochondriacs, and that's some people are going to be sensitive to all kinds of stuff that that they're not, like they're um, oh gosh, when the paleo people figured out that they went to like a Landry's or something and they got a fish and it had gluten in the seasoning or something like that, and they're like, whoa, I didn't go into a coma. That's weird, because even if I have like a crumb of a crouton in my salad that I notice and I ingest, I go into a you know catatonic shock for 2 weeks. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, I've been eating this, it has gluten in it the whole time, you know what I mean? So there
but
there
I got a
is.
counter signal against you as someone like me who has true celiac disease. I've eaten things,
Mhm.
for example, like I had a friend that cooked burgers on his grill using a barbecue sauce that I didn't know had gluten in it at all. And then
Mm.
I cooked my burgers on top of that and ate it and still got very sick. So,
Well, that's more of a blind test then, and that's going to be more valid. But most people don't have celiacs and they avoid gluten.
true, true,
But
true.
anyway,
All right, well,
not that gluten's great for you. I'm not promoting gluten. I'm just saying that again, there's trade-offs, and you
there's a
got to make
fine line
those.
between someone who has to because they have a condition or disease or sensitivity compared to someone who's overcorrecting.
Yeah.
There's a big difference
Well,
between
and gluten can lead to SIBO, and it can be bad for your gut. I mean,
Mhm,
for sure.
mhm.
But is it a poison? That is claimed by some people on the internet. I don't think so, unless you have celiac disease, something like that.
Yes.
Anyway, it was fun, John. Next time we'll get into the EMF. We should have
Yes.
started with that. We'll
Yes.
just hash out EMF. We'll give each other both barrels on on the EMF debate.
Yes, it'll be great. Hope
You,
you guys enjoy it. All right,
we should
everybody.
get. We almost had Jack Cruz on the show once. That would have been awesome.
Yes, we should still try.
Yeah, I would really like to talk to Jack Cruz about physics. Since I don't know, like my dad's a world class physicist, which doesn't make me a world class physicist, but he is a good reference for stuff. If I'm like, Dad, this doesn't sound right, and he's like, no, that's nonsense. You know what I mean? So
That is an academic appeal to authority, though. I have to say that, though.
yeah, but he gets paid a lot of money to do what he does, and so it's not just about authority; it's about his market value and his competence of being able to
True.
use physics to create value, like find oil or minerals or something in the ground. And again, using a lot of these same principles where he shoots seismic waves down to the ground and then sees what comes back up, sees what is being absorbed, what's being passed through, what's being attenuated, and he can make some pretty darn good conclusions, make a lot of money, because when you drill a dry hole